Welcome to a Heeb only episode of the Heeb and Goy Show. I am a longtime Florida Gators booster and fan, and I wanted to take some time because we're in such a unique situation here to discuss what's happened since 2011 and where we're headed and what I see as the issues for the handful of you who are interested in sports. I know normally on this channel we just complain about little stuff in life, but this is complaining too, just a more specific topic. So I want to delve into basically how we got here. Because 2011, that was 13 years ago. It's a long time, and kind of the progression that we've made to this point, and where I see us going from here. So I want to go through the the decade plus of sad coaching. So we're going to start in 2011. Will Muschamp, he was the coach in waiting at Texas. Longtime defensive coordinator, SEC guy. So Muschamp wasn't all bad, when you look back at it, because the guy could recruit, especially defense. I mean, he built a championship level defense. B plus is probably being a little kind because he was really bad on offense recruiting in terms of certainly offensive line was awful, and quarterback. Well, he did recruit Will Greer, but I'm going to give him a B plus just because what he did on defense was championship level. It's looking at, given what we've gone through since then, it's hard to complain about Muschamp's recruiting. I think all in all, we'd probably take it. But I'm going to be looking at each coach in these terms: recruiting, in game, meaning like how is he clock management, running the game itself? Does it give you a good chance to win? And then I'm going to talk program CEO. Everyone knows what that is. And then overall, and this is kind of my general thoughts, with 13 years since. So Muschamp overall was a C for me. He did get an SEC job after Florida, and that's an indicator of a coach too. Like if you have a guy that you have here and he gets fired and goes on to do nothing and get hired, which we're going to get to in a minute, at a MAC school and nowhere else, it kind of gives you an idea what everyone else thinks. But initially, McElwain, I think he went back to Auburn, became a defensive coordinator, and then eventually he was the head coach of South Carolina for, not a couple of years. He was there for a few years. So in game, he was bad, as we all know. Just could never build an offense. It was just one stupid thing after the other, it felt like. That last game he coached versus South Carolina was just a comedy of errors. I mean, that sums up the Muschamp era, really. The Muschamp era was sort of punctuated in my mind by, or the general idea of the Muschamp era was the wins were no fun and the losses were excruciating. Like you were winning games 12-7 or whatever. So anyway, in game he was bad. Program CEO, I'm going to give him a C. He was middle of the range, and I think C overall. I mean, I think if you look back at the four coaches we've had, you could make an argument that he was the best of the four. And certainly, like I said, if you could just take his defensive recruiting and just keep that, he'd be pretty good. He was just so bad on the offensive side and could never get it together. So that was 2011, 2014, and we thought, okay, all right, we had our bad hire. Let's move on and let's correct it. So in comes McElwain. Well, in my humble opinion, he was the worst that we've had during this time. Recruiting, he was not good. In game, he was actually okay in game. I mean, he did find ways to win games. He wasn't really a bad in-game coach. That wasn't his issue. He was just a disaster in terms of running the program, being your CEO, being the face of the program. Just embarrassing. He was bad on a microphone. He was a guy that he was not an SEC caliber head coach. He just wasn't. And, since then, look, he's gone to Central Michigan, and that's who hired him. Like no one's looking for Jim McElwain, even now, 7 years later. So I gave him a D overall. I didn't give anyone an F, even though technically they all failed. But he was, in my opinion, the worst that we've had since the Urban Meyer situation. And you can debate. I'm going to get into the Napier stuff in a bit, but in my mind, McElwain was as bad as it got, just overall. He left the program a mess, roster-wise, for the most part. You could argue that Mullen left it worse. But, in my mind, we went from McElwain, who was just bad, not a head coach, like not a high-level head coach, to a guy that sort of was the same, just a little better caliber head coach. So Mullen, in my opinion, was basically, or McElwain is dollar store Mullen. They're similar. Good in-game coaches, good offensive minds, lazy recruiters. Mullen was definitely better than McElwain. You could, like, between him and Muschamp, it's tough. Like, but who was the better of the two? You would have to say Mullen, just because he did have a successful stint as the head coach at Mississippi State. That's a tough place to win. And he got here, he didn't recruit great. He recruited okay. He was a guy that if you had kept him and he didn't just run out of gas like you did and sort of give up, you would be in a situation where you'd be winning 8-9 games a year, maybe 10. If you got a quarterback that was really good, you could compete for titles, especially in a 12-game playoff. So I guess in that sense, Mullen was probably the best of the four, because you give him an elite level quarterback. I don't know that you'd ever win a national title, but you'd at least be in the conversation, like 2020. But, the defense was so bad. And then since then, notably, he's done nothing. Like vacation television, who knows what's going on there. I suspect he sort of ran out of gas. He was in Mississippi State quite a long time. I think it was a decade, basically, 9 years. It's a long time to be an SEC head coach. I mean, really, if you look at the tenure of most of these guys, they don't last that long. So, I mean, I think he probably ran out of gas. He just was kind of a douche. That was the scuttlebutt around town, and the reason that Foley never wanted to hire him. And that was sort of validated by what happened. He did okay, won games. I mean, certainly better than what we've been going through. He won games, but just was openly sort of lazy about recruiting and about talking about recruiting. And if you want to be a consistent winner, that's an important thing, arguably as important as in-game coaching, maybe more so, really. I mean, Kirby Smart that great of an in-game coach? I don't think so. He has rosters that are better, way better than everybody else. So ultimately, I think that's what kind of did Mullen in. If you said to me, you have to have one of the previous four back, you have to pick, I would probably pick Mullen. It'd be between him and Muschamp. Each has their pluses and minuses. Mullen was probably overall a little better. But that was Dan Mullen. So he left, went to TV, and then we got Mr. Scared Money. So I think it's important with Napier to recognize the fact that he had two things really going against him that the other coaches did not have, at least to the degree that he did. One is the schedule. I mean, most coaches, typically you're going to get 3 to 4, if not cupcakes, games you absolutely should win where you're a heavy favorite a year. Certainly 2 full cupcakes, like games that you absolutely couldn't lose if you tried, and then a couple more that, you're pretty much going to win. Napier didn't get those. He got maybe 1 a year. He starts with the Utah back and forth, home and home. This year, they've got the toughest schedule that has ever been played, arguably. And so I do kind of feel bad for him in that sense. And he inherited a mess. The roster was bad, especially on defense, just bad. And it was bad in places you can't be bad in the SEC, which is the line of scrimmage, which is what we're still seeing. So I do grade him on a curve because I do think, like I said, I just feel like if you had given that schedule to almost anybody with that roster, that's tough. Okay. That said, we're in year 3. And it is abundantly clear that he sucks in terms of the little intangibles in a game. Clock management, making sure guys don't have the same number on a play, like a million little things. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. That's how I would describe Napier. Death by 1,000 cuts. He's not like really bad at any one thing, I would say. his offenses are kind of, ugh, but like you wouldn't pick one thing and say, boy, this like Muschamp offense, just terrible, right? It's more a million little things. And the first couple of years, you let it go. The Miami game was it. That was it. There's no excuse for that. There is no excuse for that. Losing the game, sure. Losing the game the way they did, no. This guy's gone. He's not going to be here next year. He may not be here a week from now. And I just think, it is unfortunate, but he's not, I would call him not an SEC caliber head coach. And I think once this year's over and he gets fired, you will see that. But I don't think he's terrible. Most fans think he's worse than I think he is. I don't think he's as bad. I think I would rather him than McElwain. You give McElwain these schedules, what do you think happens? So, recruiting has been overall better than Mullen and McElwain. Not great, but better. But he's gone. And there's no question he's gone. It's too late. I don't see any scenario where he sticks around. If he played Lagway 100% of the time, it would make it easier for him to stick around, but he won't do that. So it's a moot point. You're going to lose too many games. I don't care about the schedule. You can't go 3-9 here. He's gone. And the thing is, I don't look at this as negatively as most. I feel like, number one, he's going to leave the roster in a better, you could argue, well, other than Muschamp's defense, of course, you could argue that he will leave the roster in better shape overall than the previous three did overall. Muschamp's defenses were elite, but his offenses were so horrible that, like, especially on the offensive line, I mean, they brought in an FCS guy, I think, in McElwain's first year. So I think there was like one scholarship quarterback on the roster when McElwain came in. I mean, it was Will Greer, but still. So I think overall, in terms of numbers, in terms of just putting a roster together, it's better than it has been. And, top 15 roster nationally, and you got DJ Lagway. That's the key. And I think you keep him, and you got something. You bring in the right coach. You bring in someone who knows how to win games in the SEC. And you're competitive in 2025 right away, in my opinion. I don't think there's some massive drop off where you have to wait. I don't think that's going to happen. Not with Lagway. Of course, they got to keep him. But so the next question is, who's next, right? What should the Florida Gators do? If I'm just a schmuck, I'm just some Jewish guy who's been paying in for many years to be a booster. What would I do? Like, what do I think? Well, I think historically, this program has gone for the up-and-comer. They've gone for, Spurrier was the Duke head coach. Urban Meyer was the Utah head coach. They were not a Power 5 team at the time. They've gone for the up-and-comer. And it worked for Spurrier and Meyer, but it has failed miserably for the past 4. And Mullen wasn't an up-and-comer. He had been an SEC head coach. So that one was the only deviation. But I think this time it's really going to be hard for them to get away with hiring a guy nobody's heard of. Not that they won't do that, but it's hard to see them doing that. So for me, I just think the first call has got to be Urban Meyer. How is it not? How do you not at least call him? How? The guy is, assuming he's not retired, which I don't know, but let's assume he's not retired. Let's assume he wants to coach again. He's the best coach out there. He's the best coach, period. Nick Saban's retired. He's not in the discussion anymore. Who's next? Meyer's got 3 national titles under his belt. I don't know how you don't call him. I think that's your first call. He's only 60 years old. He should be able to give you at least 5 good years. Who wouldn't take that? So that's me. And I've had people tell me I'm crazy. Why would you want him back? Blah, blah. It's a different era. He's an older guy now. I'm sure he has, gotten over some of the stuff that plagued him while he was here. You can now legally pay players, so he doesn't have to worry about all that stress. So I think that's your guy. I think that's the number one call. If Urban Meyer wants back in, that's who I'm bringing in. Redemption story. I think that, and the other thing, the chance of him failing is very low. I mean, I think this guy will be good from the jump. But if he doesn't want back in, or if whoever here is too stubborn to go after him or whatever, then the next one is what everybody says, which is Lane Kiffin. He is your best proven SEC head coach who's at a lower level program who would probably come here. I don't know about him with recruiting. May not matter with a 12-team playoff. You can amass a typical Florida roster, which even in a bad year is like top 15, and still make the 12-team playoff every year if you have a quarterback and you have a good offensive-minded coach. And that's what Lane Kiffin is. Lane Kiffin will score points. He knows how to coach offense. I feel like he would immediately come in and they would be good. I don't know if they'd be as – again, Urban Meyer's a better coach than Lane Kiffin. Sorry. But Lane Kiffin would be fine. He would certainly be fun. You know, he's the type of guy you love if he's your guy and you hate if he's not your guy, kind of like Spurrier was. So that's the next guy. Those are your two. I don't know who else who is like a splash name hire that you would even be able to get or call. To me, that's your two. Now, if you're going to go outside those two, the only one that I know of that makes any sense who's sort of your up-and-comer, given the fact that I think hiring an up-and-comer is going to be tough for them, given what the past four, would be Jed Fish, who is a Gator, played under Spurrier, won at Arizona, which is hard, is now in his first year at Washington. Not a sure thing by any stretch, but that's the up-and-comer, I think, that would at least make some sense. He's a Gator. That helps. But if it's not him, I mean, you're going after your up-and-comers du jour. You're sort of like scraping at whoever is out there and, the defensive coordinator at wherever, an offensive coordinator at wherever. I just don't think they could do that this time. I think it's going to be really, really hard to go after a guy no one's heard of or a lower-level coach or a guy who's coaching it, in the Sun Belt. I think these programs tend to go opposite, right? That's how it works. Something doesn't work, so all right, let's try the other way. I just think the first two names on this list have a very high percentage chance of success. And Urban is a slam dunk. And Lane Kiffin is probably a slam dunk too in terms of coming in and winning games. He's sort of like Dan Mullen in that way, but I don't think he would run out of gas. And, he's doing well at Ole Miss. Now, would he come here? Yes. Anyone who tells you he would stay at Ole Miss is out of their mind. No one keeps that job if Florida comes a calling. So, and I know Florida's been in the toilet for a long time. It's been a terrible, terrible situation. 4 bad coaches. The university wants to be an elite academic school. They kind of want to be UVA in a lot of ways. You're still an SEC program. You're still the flagship university in the best recruiting state in the country. You still have a lot of money. You have great facilities. I'm not going to say it's an A+ job anymore just because of what's happened and how the school wants to be elite academically. And that's really hard to do and also be good at football. The only school that's kind of done that is Michigan, and they're in the Big Ten. You're in the Big Ten. You're playing 8 games a year against teams you should beat at least. So, but really that's it. Like I keep telling people it's really hard to be elite academically and elite in football. That's really hard to do. And Georgia's close because they're a really good school. They're not elite public school, but they're really good. So I don't know how long. We'll see. I mean, maybe Kirby can keep that going forever. I don't know. But it's still an A job. It's not an A+ job like Alabama or Ohio State. Those are A+ jobs, Texas. But it's an A job. It is. It just is. And the Mississippi schools, you're always hamstrung by the fact that, it just is what it is. It's, call it unfair. Those are lower tier schools in terms of the SEC. You can win a lot there. You can build and you can even compete for titles. 100% you can, but not every year. It's going to be hard to do every year. Whereas at Florida, you get the right guy, you can do it every year, especially with a 12-team playoff. So that's my spiel on the Florida Gator coaching situation. I just wanted to make a video because this is something I'm passionate about. Let me know in the comments what you think. Any Gator fans, any football fans watching this, I feel like Urban Meyer's the guy. I think that's the call you got to make. But that's it. And let's hope the 5th time's the charm. Peace.